Let's celebrate the 30th birthday of the Sega Mega Drive. So let's take it away. In this video I'm gonna talk about the Sega Mega Drive, some iconic titles, some iconic peripherals, but also my memories of the Sega Mega Drive, the games I like about the Sega Mega Drive, and also at the end I'll do a montage to remember the Sega Mega Drive. On the 29th of October in 1988, Sega of Japan released the Sega Mega Drive in Japan. We only saw the console 1 year later in the US and 2 years later in Europe. But the console wasn't immediately a success. It is only after the appearance of a blue Hedgehog that the system gained some ground. Regretfully, the Mega Drive is the only console of Sega that really did really well. The Master System before the Mega Drive wasn't really successful, especially not in the USA. In Europe and Brazil it was more successful. And after that Sega made some really terrible mistakes. The 32X, for example, wasn't really successful. The Saturn wasn't really successful. The Mega CD wasn't really successful. But they did some clever things. For example, Sega released a backwards compatible machine with the Mega Drive, the Master System converter. The Master System converter had to compete in the first place with the NES, but that didn't really work. The Master System converter was indeed a converter, but it was only to convert a special cartridge format to another format. But the device itself didn't do anything because all the hardware was already in the Mega Drive, and that hardware was present in the Mega Drive 1 and the Mega Drive 2, but not in the Mega Drive 3. Sega did a lot of releases of the of the Mega Drive, as I talked earlier, the Mega Drive 1, the Mega Drive 2. But they also released a special combination system with another add-on because they went accessory crazy with the thing, the Mega CD. And the Mega CD was a device that you could Sega Genesis games with, but with some extra power. There was a second processor in that, and it had hardware scaling, for example, that the Super NES has, but the Mega Drive didn't. They released a combination device, and it's a really small device that is called the Multi-Mega in Europe, but the CDX, I believe, in the USA. A really small device compared to, well, this is only the Mega Drive 2. But yeah, I talked about earlier about the 32X, that was another add-on. Yeah, it didn't really catch on because the Saturn was already released in the same time span as the 32X was released. The Mega Drive has a really iconic control pad. When we take a look at the NES, that was a blocky thing, and yeah, that was not really ergonomic, but the controller for the Sega Mega Drive was, and that was the first in the video game land. But soon it turns out that wasn't enough, and games, for example, like Street Fighter used a special controller that was a 6-button controller, and that has 3 extra buttons on top of the 3 existing buttons. A really weird peripheral that I, well, never used is the Sega mouse. There are some games that support it, but games like Theme Park, for example, which really could profit from the Sega mouse, didn't really do that. So that is a real shame. When I take a look at the design of the Mega Drive, the first one, I think the design of that machine will still hold up to this day. You don't see that it's 30 years old, and if you look at the Super NES, for example, or a NES particularly, yeah, that design aged pretty bad. Some iconic titles are, of course, Sonic 1, but also, of course, Sonic 2. And some Other iconic titles are Earthworm Jim. I didn't have this game as a kid, but yeah, I like it. The graphics are pretty good and a lot of people love this game. I have here also a combination of 3 really iconic titles for the Genesis. The Golden Axe, of course, the arcade classic that they ported to the Mega Drive, Streets of Rage on here, and The Revenge of Shinobi. But Sega and third-party developers delivered so many great games to the system. One of the games that I really have to mention is Comix Zone. This was at the day so special and so unique. It's a brawler in that regard. It isn't really special, but it takes part in a comic book, and you can move between the pictures in that comic book. Really original gameplay. It's pretty hard too, but yeah, it was also released for the PC, by the way. Really iconic title for the Mega Drive. What also a super iconic title was for the Mega Drive was Virtua Racing, and I think Virtua Racing is the least copied pirated version of a game, because there was a special SVP chip in there. SVP was Sega Virtual Processor, and that Virtua processor made it possible that you could render some polygons on the machine, just to compete with Star Fox for the Super NES. There was only one game released with this processor, which when you want to emulate, you need to make some changes to that emulator to only have to make it work on this game. So if you want to play it, you have to play it on the original hardware, otherwise it won't work. An iconic title, but not one of my favorite. I did a let's play of this game, is Mickey Mania. Mickey Mania is iconic in my opinion, but definitely not unique. The graphics of this game are great. I think it was the channel Game Hut that explained how they made the beautiful graphics of the game. I want to mention it because of the beautiful graphics in the game. What really captured the atmosphere really well was the World of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. The music of this game is great, the graphics are good, not as good of course as Virtua Racing or Mickey Mania, but they're really colorful and bright, and yeah, it's a really good game for kids. What I don't like about the game is that it's flat out too easy. You can play it in one run. I want to mention this game. This is Red Zone for the Mega Drive. Red Zone is a special game because the graphics are so great. The gameplay isn't really good, to be honest, but they did some really special effects, some really good tricks to push the hardware of the Genesis to the limits. Red Zone, they had some 3D effects in it. It's a really special game graphics wise, but not gameplay wise. The end 80s, begin 90s was such a good place for gamers because there was being developed so much, and 3D was a problem, for example, but there were so many firsts in that era too. For example, a totally different game was a game from EA in their good days, Haunting, starring Polterguy. You have to haunt a house, you have to scare a family. That is a really original idea that nobody had done before. At my parents' home we had a NES, and I wanted to have a console for my own very own console that I saved up to, and I bought a Master System with Sonic 1, and I love this game to this day. It's the gameplay, it is how it's made, how it plays. I really love this game. But I saw Sonic 1 for the Mega Drive, and I looked at the graphics and there was such a big difference between those two games. And I wanted to play Sonic 1 because Sonic 1 for the Master System was great, so Sonic 1 for the Mega Drive must be great too. Yeah, it was great, but in my opinion not as great as Sonic for the Master System. And I sold my Master System and I regret that till this day, so I could buy a Mega Drive. But I wanted to do one thing in particular. I wanted to have Sonic 1 again, so I rebought Sonic 1 because I sold it, and I bought a Master System converter so I could play the game again, but now on my Mega Drive. I loved the Master System and I loved the Mega Drive till bits because Sega was my company. Sega was my thing. And I want to share with you one of my favorite games on the Mega Drive, and there are a bunch. After market I bought a game that I really like, and that is Dune 2, The Battle for Arrakis or Arrakis. That game is a strategy game and you have to conquer the base of the enemy. How you do that, it's not a straight up shooter or anything. You have to use some tactics to do that. What I don't like about this game, although I like the game, one negative is that the difficulty level ramps up so quickly that yeah, I can't beat it after level 2 or something. That I don't like about the game. One of my favorite games as a kid was a shooter, and that shooter was Biohazard Battle. I played this recently on the channel. If you want to see that let's play of the game, you can check it out in the videos list of my channel. I like the game. After market I bought Empire of Steel. Wow, what a game, what a shooter! I love it. I love the style, I love the graphics. It's great. It is difficult, yes, but not insanely difficult like many shooters, like for example Thunderforce. If you want to play one game or one shooter in particular, yeah, pick up this one, Empire of Steel, and I believe the English title is Steel Empire, USA title. This is an amazing game. When we stay at the shooters, I have here Thunderforce 4. I have regretfully the game in a really bad shape. I picked it up in a batch and I didn't know that the game was this rare. It's a really rare title. It is only released in Europe, I think, or Europe and Brazil, I don't know for sure. I have to pick it up. The real one, in a real good condition, but yeah, I find it really hard to pay 150 euros for a game when I have it already in my collection, even if it's in a bad state. Thunderforce 4. The graphics are great. They made really good use of the capabilities of the Mega Drive, parallax scrolling. The music is amazing. When I heard the music of the game, I was blown away. That the Genesis could do that rocking guitars, and wow, that is really amazing. The game is hard as hell. Regretfully, try to play it with cheat codes once, and it's too difficult, but it's a really fun game to play it once in a while. Definitely recommend it if you like to play a good game for the Genesis. A somewhat more rare game that I picked up recently, but I like it a lot, is Alicia Dragoon. It is a pretty common title, but not too common, so you have to look for it, and especially in a good state. It's a platformer. It has a really weird, bizarre atmosphere, little cold and non-personal, but it's really well done. You play as I think Alicia, I don't know, and you have a couple of dragons with you, and those dragons have special powers and also can kill enemies. The only problem is you have to look out that the enemies don't kill your dragon, because then your dragon dies and you can't use it to defeat any future enemies. It's not an easy game to play, but I recommend it if you can find it. A little bit in the same style, I have a game from EA, again EA in their good days, is Blades of Vengeance. The style is a little bit the same as Alicia Dragoon, only you don't have a dragon, you can play as 3 characters in a medieval world. It's a typical platformer, but in an ancient atmosphere. Really like the game. The atmosphere is really well done in this game. One of the best Mega Drive games, hands down, is Dynamite Headdy. Luckily it isn't a real rare title, but it is amazing. It's a platformer. You can jump on platforms by grabbing it with your head. The gameplay is unique. I have never seen something like this before. It's a Treasure game, the firm Treasure, which made incredibly good games, and I will have a Treasure game in a minute, another Treasure game in a minute. This game is good. It isn't an easy game. I picked it up aftermarket, but I would have liked this so much as a kid. Dynamite Headdy, really colorful, really original. You have to figure out what you have to do. The bosses, etc., are really. It's original. It's so original. You have to play it. It's amazing. Another shooter for the Mega Drive, and you can count this maybe as Red Dead Redemption version -1. It's a straight up shooter. What I don't like about the game is that the character walks a little bit slow, but otherwise, yeah, it's pretty fun. The graphics aren't amazing, but are good, and the atmosphere is really well done. It is just an amazing game, and it's a port of an arcade. There's a SNES version, but when it comes to energy or atmosphere, it's the same, but it isn't the same title. So if you have the SNES version, and want to look at the Mega Drive version, it is different enough to enjoy it a lot. Another platformer / shooter is Vectorman. There were 2 Vectorman games made for the Mega Drive, but this is Vectorman 1. I had this as a kid. They rendered the sprites 3D, and the graphics are amazing of this game. The music is a little bit weird, and it has a weird atmosphere, a little bit impersonal, hard and cold, but nevertheless it's really well done. Vectorman, oh, we're ramping up to better games. One of the better games on the Mega Drive is definitely Ristar. The graphics are amazing, they are colorful. This is regretfully a little bit a more collectible game, because it was released at the end of the life cycle of the Mega Drive, 1995. So people weren't that interesting in the Mega Drive anymore. But the graphics of this game are amazing, the animations of the game are amazing, the sound of the game is amazing and so recognizable, and wow, there should have been a lot more titles like Ristar on the Mega Drive, and I don't know why they didn't continue this series, because it is amazing. Yeah, probably because it wasn't a really big success, but Ristar made a couple of cameos on different games. Ristar, it's a platformer. You can you have long hands, and when you grab an enemy, you will kill it with your hands by bouncing up, and you can hang on trees, and that's the way you advance to a higher platform. Somewhat puzzle elements are in there. Yeah, it's just a really good platform game. Collectible is the next game. It is pretty expensive. You can pay over €100 for this game. When I saw the game footage of this game, I was amazed that this is a kind of game that was released for the Mega Drive. Because I didn't know that something like this exists. The gameplay is fluent, it's fast, it's action, it's amazing. I'm talking about Gunstar Heroes. You can choose at the beginning of the game. You can choose between 4 different levels. The first 3 are good levels. Really the first one is the most beautiful and most thought out and the most iconic, I feel, for Gunstar Heroes. The 4th level is the dice level, and you have to conquer really small sections of a game, and when you throw the dice you will advance like on a really board game. That is, yeah, the game limps a bit on that level, but after you have beaten all the 4 levels, there is even a section in the game with a shooter, with shooter elements, and I mean space shooter. It's a really nice combination of different elements. It's pretty difficult. It's a pretty difficult game, shooter platformer. But the gameplay is so fluent and it's so wow. I would have loved this game as a kid. I would have played the hell out of this game. I know that for sure. And regretfully, it's a rare game. It's a treasure game. That is the other treasure game I was talking about. Gunstar Heroes. If you haven't played it, you need to play it. You need to play it. One of the games that as a kid I love the most, I've 2 titles left. The first title, that is a title that I still like and still love to death, but as a kid that was my favorite game of all, and that was not really special, but it was Sonic and Knuckles. Wow, I played this so many times, and I still enjoy it when I want to play a game for an hour and a half. I play through the whole game. I beat it multiple times and it's still fun. The graphics are so good, the music is so recognizable. It's just amazing. It is such an amazing game. Sonic & Knuckles is a little bit special because you can, they called it the lock-on technology. You can lock on a different game on the cartridge, because it has a slot on top of the cartridge, and you can click on that cartridge, for example Sonic 2, and then you can play as Knuckles. Sonic 2 only has 1 character you can play, and but you can play Knuckles in Sonic 2. In Sonic 3 you have some extra levels and you can play it as a whole game from starting at Sonic 3, going back, going all the way to Sonic and Knuckles, because Sonic and Knuckles was Sonic 3 was divided in 2 parts, Sonic 3 eventually and Sonic and Knuckles. These were the last levels of Sonic 3, but to be honest, Sonic 3 was not my favorite game. Didn't really grab me, but Sonic and Knuckles did. And if it is the same game, I don't know why I have so much fond memories of this game and I don't like Sonic 3. Then the game I love the most at this moment. I bought this aftermarket. Luckily it's not a real collector's item, but it is really famous for being a good game, and I agree. It's in my opinion the best game for the Mega Drive. It is a platformer game and it is Rocket Knight Adventures. The graphics are good, they are colorful, the playability is really good, the difficulty level is just on spot. There's a really good difference between different levels, and some have a platformer element, some have you have to stand on a mine cart and duck at the right time and jump on other carts. That is a really fun element in the game. I didn't beat it yet because the last levels are somewhat difficult, and I think I have reached the end boss just once or twice, because it's a level and you need to be on the right spot at the same time, because there's a robot chasing you, and if you are a little bit too late then you don't reach the end boss. But there was a second Rocket Knight adventure game, and that was Sparkster, and they missed everything about the game. This is collectible, this isn't, this is better. Sparkster, although it's a sequel, this was a little bit finicky with the rocket controls. You need sometimes the rocket controls to advance. Then you shoot forward in the level. Sparkster has that same element. The music is great of the game, but there is a level with purple drops that drop on you, and it isn't fun to play. The levels are annoying. They fixed the thing that was a little bit annoying with the rocket, but not it's not limping on that, for example. But this is limping on so many things. Yeah, and it's expensive too. And I promise you my montage to remember the Sega Mega Drive.